On March 14, 1869, Sister Catherine walked into the sheriff's office in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and confessed to a murder. Her hands trembled as she described every detail: the victim's name, the location, even the exact time of death. There was just one problem. The murder hadn't happened yet, and it wouldn't happen for another 3 days. What the sheriff discovered next would challenge everything he believed about guilt, innocence, and the thin line between prophecy and madness. The spring of 1869 brought unusual warmth to Louisiana. The Mississippi River ran high that year, swollen with melted snow from up north. In the heart of Baton Rouge, the Sisters of Mercy Convent sat on a hill overlooking the muddy waters below. 23 nuns lived there, devoted to prayer and caring for the sick. Among them was Sister Catherine Devereaux, a 32-year-old woman who had taken her vows 7 years earlier. Sister Catherine came from old Louisiana money. Her father owned 3 plantations before the war. When the Confederacy fell, so did the Devereaux fortune. Catherine's 2 brothers died at Shiloh. Her mother passed from grief 6 months later. With nothing left but a crumbling mansion and debts, Catherine turned to God. The other sisters knew her as quiet, obedient, and unremarkable. That changed on March 14th. Sheriff Thomas Beaumont was eating his lunch when Sister Catherine entered his office. He later said she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles hung under her eyes. Her habit was wrinkled, as if she'd been twisting the fabric in her hands for hours. When she spoke, her voice was steady but strange, like she was reciting something she'd memorized. "I need to confess to a murder," she said. Beaumont set down his sandwich. In his 15 years as sheriff, he'd heard plenty of confessions. Most came from drunks feeling guilty about bar fights or thieves with guilty consciences. But a nun? That was new. "What murder would that be, sister?" he asked. "The murder of Evangeline Rousseau," Sister Catherine replied. "I will kill her 3 days from now, on March 17th, at precisely 9 o'clock in the evening. I will strangle her with a rosary in the convent garden, beneath the magnolia tree." Beaumont stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, he found his voice. "Sister, are you feeling well? Should I fetch a doctor?" "I am perfectly sound in mind and body," she said. "I am telling you what will happen. I will murder Evangeline Rousseau. I have seen it. I have lived it. And I cannot stop it." Now, Evangeline Rousseau was well known in Baton Rouge. She was the 19-year-old daughter of Judge Henri Rousseau, one of the wealthiest men in the parish. Evangeline was beautiful, charming, and engaged to marry a young lawyer named David Landry. She volunteered at the convent twice a week, helping the sisters tend to sick children in the charity ward. Beaumont knew all this. He also knew that Sister Catherine had never shown any signs of violence or madness. She had no criminal record, no history of outbursts. Yet here she sat, calmly describing a murder that hadn't occurred. "Sister Catherine," he said slowly, "Miss Rousseau is alive and well. Are you saying you plan to kill her?" "No," she replied. "I am saying that I will kill her. Whether I plan to or not makes no difference. I have already done it. I will do it again. Time is a circle, Sheriff, and I am trapped inside it." The way she said it made the hair on Beaumont's neck stand up. There was something in her eyes, something dark and knowing. She wasn't raving like a lunatic. She spoke with the certainty of someone who had witnessed their own actions and found themselves powerless to change them. Beaumont decided to test her. "Tell me exactly what happens." Sister Catherine nodded, as if she'd been waiting for this question. She closed her eyes and began to speak. "It is March 17th, 9 o'clock in the evening. Evangeline comes to the convent after dark. She often does this when she needs to speak privately with Mother Superior about her wedding plans. But Mother Superior is delayed that night, attending to a sick child in the city. Evangeline decides to wait in the garden. I find her there beneath the magnolia tree. We speak for several minutes. She tells me something terrible, something I cannot repeat, and then I place my hands around her throat. I use my rosary. The beads cut into her neck. She struggles, but I am stronger. It takes 4 minutes for her to die. When it is over, I drag her body into the tool shed behind the chapel. I cover her with old burlap sacks. Then I return to my cell and pray until morning. The detail was chilling. The calm delivery was worse. Beaumont scribbled notes on a piece of paper, though his hand shook slightly. "Why would you kill her?" he asked. "What does she tell you?" Sister Catherine opened her eyes. "I cannot say. Not yet. If I tell you now, you will not believe me. You will think I am insane, but when it happens, you will understand." Beaumont leaned back in his chair. He had a choice to make. He could arrest Sister Catherine right now for threatening to commit murder, but she hadn't actually threatened anyone. She'd confessed to something that hadn't happened. He could have her declared insane and sent to an asylum, or he could wait and see if any of this came true. The logical part of his brain told him this was nonsense. The superstitious part, the part that grew up hearing stories about voodoo priestesses and swamp witches, wasn't so sure. "I'm going to keep an eye on Miss Rousseau," he said finally. "If anything happens to her, anything at all, you will hang for it. Do you understand?" "Yes," Sister Catherine said. "I understand, but it will make no difference. What I have seen will come to pass." She stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. "One more thing, Sheriff. When you find her body, you will discover something in her hand, a piece of paper with 7 words written on it. Those words will explain everything, but only after it is too late." Then she was gone. Beaumont sat alone in his office, staring at his notes. He should have arrested her. He should have done something. Instead, he sent a deputy to watch the Rousseau house and another to keep an eye on the convent. Then he went home and poured himself a very large glass of whiskey. 3 days passed slowly. On March 15th, nothing unusual happened. Evangeline Rousseau attended church in the morning and went shopping with her mother in the afternoon. Sister Catherine performed her duties at the convent without incident. Beaumont's deputies reported no suspicious activity. On March 16th, Evangeline visited the convent as scheduled. She spent 2 hours in the charity ward, reading to sick children. Sister Catherine was also there, but the 2 women barely interacted. One of Beaumont's deputies watched them the entire time. Nothing seemed wrong. March 17th arrived with heavy clouds and the smell of rain in the air. Beaumont stationed himself outside the Rousseau mansion that evening. He felt foolish, like a child afraid of ghost stories. But he couldn't shake the memory of Sister Catherine's eyes, the certainty in her voice. At 8:30, Evangeline's carriage left the house. Beaumont followed at a distance. The carriage headed toward the convent, just as Sister Catherine had predicted. His heart began to pound. The carriage stopped at the convent gates at 8:50. Evangeline stepped out, alone. She wore a dark blue dress and carried a small purse. She walked up the path toward the main building. Beaumont dismounted his horse and followed on foot, staying in the shadows. If you're still watching, here's where things get truly disturbing. Evangeline spoke briefly with a young novice at the door, then made her way to the garden. Beaumont could see her clearly in the lamplight that spilled from the convent windows. She walked to the magnolia tree and sat on a stone bench beneath it, exactly as Sister Catherine had described. Beaumont checked his pocket watch. 8:55. Minutes ticked by. The garden was quiet except for crickets and the distant sound of the river. Evangeline sat peacefully, occasionally glancing toward the main building as if waiting for someone. 9 o'clock arrived. The chapel bell began to toll. On the 3rd chime, a figure emerged from the shadows near the chapel. Even from a distance, Beaumont recognized the black habit. Sister Catherine. She walked toward Evangeline with measured steps. Beaumont tensed, ready to intervene, but he hesitated. He wanted to see if Sister Catherine's prediction would truly come to pass, or if this was all elaborate theater. The 2 women began talking. Beaumont couldn't hear their words, but their body language seemed normal at first. Then Evangeline stood abruptly. She reached into her purse and pulled out something, an envelope or a piece of paper. She held it out to Sister Catherine. Whatever was in that envelope changed everything. Sister Catherine staggered backward as if struck. Her hand went to her mouth. Evangeline was speaking rapidly now, her face twisted with emotion. Sister Catherine shook her head violently, backing away. But Evangeline followed, pressing the paper into her hands. Then Sister Catherine screamed. It was a sound of pure anguish, raw and animalistic. It echoed across the garden and sent birds fleeing from the trees. Evangeline reached for her, perhaps trying to comfort her. But Sister Catherine's hands shot out. They closed around Evangeline's throat. Beaumont broke from his hiding place and ran toward them, shouting. But he was too far away. Sister Catherine pulled her rosary from her belt, the wooden beads clicking together. She wrapped it around Evangeline's neck and twisted. Evangeline's eyes went wide. Her hands clawed at the rosary, at Sister Catherine's wrists, at anything she could reach. But Sister Catherine held firm, her face blank, her eyes staring at something beyond this world. Beaumont reached them just as Evangeline's struggles began to weaken. He grabbed Sister Catherine from behind and threw her to the ground. Evangeline collapsed, gasping for air. The rosary fell into the grass, its beads stained with blood from where they'd cut into her neck. But Evangeline was alive. Sister Catherine lay on the ground, motionless. When Beaumont rolled her over, her eyes were closed. She wasn't unconscious, she was smiling. "It is done," she whispered. "It is finally done." "She's alive," Beaumont said. "You failed." Sister Catherine's eyes opened. The smile faded. She looked at Evangeline, who was coughing and crying, her hands pressed to her bruised throat. "No," Sister Catherine said, "that is not how it happens. She dies. She must die." "Well, she didn't," Beaumont growled. "And now you're going to hang for attempted murder." He hauled Sister Catherine to her feet and called for his deputies. Other nuns were rushing into the garden now, drawn by the commotion. Evangeline was surrounded by concerned sisters, all checking her injuries and thanking God she was alive. Beaumont noticed something on the ground where Evangeline had fallen, the envelope she'd been holding. He picked it up. It was still sealed, addressed to Sister Catherine in elegant handwriting. "What's in this?" he demanded. Sister Catherine looked at him with hollow eyes. "The truth," she said. "The reason I had to kill her. The reason I will always kill her, in every version of this night that plays out in my mind." Beaumont broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. As he read, the color drained from his face. The letter was from Evangeline's father, Judge Rousseau. But it wasn't addressed to Evangeline. It was addressed to someone named Catherine Devereaux, dated 18 years earlier, before Sister Catherine had joined the convent. In the letter, Judge Rousseau admitted to a terrible crime. During the war, when the Devereaux family was struggling, he had embezzled funds from Catherine's father's estate. He'd used his position as the family's lawyer to steal everything they owned. Catherine's father had died not knowing he'd been betrayed by a trusted friend. The family's ruin, the loss of their home, Catherine's mother's grief. It was all because of Henri Rousseau. But there was more. The letter revealed that Evangeline was not actually Judge Rousseau's daughter by blood. She was Catherine's half-sister. Before the war, before Catherine's father died, he'd had a brief affair with Evangeline's mother. When Evangeline was born, Rousseau claimed her as his own to hide the scandal. He'd raised her as his daughter, never telling her the truth about her real father. Evangeline had recently discovered these letters while cleaning out her father's study. She'd planned to give them to Catherine, thinking she deserved to know the truth about what had happened to her family. Beaumont looked up from the letter. His hands were shaking. "She was going to tell you that the man who destroyed your family had raised your sister as his own daughter," he said quietly. "That's why you killed her, or tried to." Sister Catherine nodded slowly. "In my visions, in the 100 times I have lived this night in my dreams, she tells me everything. And every time the rage consumes me. Every time I strangle her with this rosary, every time she dies. I have confessed this murder 1,000 times in my mind. I came to you hoping that speaking it aloud would break the cycle, that knowing what I would do would stop me from doing it." "It almost didn't," Beaumont said. "No," Sister Catherine agreed. It almost didn't. She looked at Evangeline, who was being helped into the convent by the other sisters. Is she truly alive? Or is this another dream? She's alive, Beaumont confirmed. And you're under arrest. The trial of Sister Catherine Devereux lasted 3 weeks. The newspapers called it the trial of the prophet nun. People came from 3 states to watch. Beaumont testified about Sister Catherine's confession 3 days before the attack. He read aloud from his notes, describing every detail she'd gotten right. The magnolia tree, the time, the rosary, even the envelope. The defense argued that Sister Catherine was insane, plagued by prophetic visions that compelled her to act. The prosecution argued she'd simply planned to murder Evangeline and invented the story about visions to establish an insanity defense. But there was no explaining how she'd known 3 days in advance exactly what would happen, down to the smallest detail. No one could explain the envelope, which Evangeline had only decided to bring that morning. No one could explain how Sister Catherine knew Mother Superior would be delayed that night, which hadn't been determined until an hour before Evangeline arrived. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found her guilty of attempted murder but recommended mercy due to extreme mental disturbance. The judge sentenced her to life in an asylum rather than death by hanging. Evangeline Rousseau never married David Landry. She broke off the engagement 2 weeks after the attack and left Louisiana. Some said she moved to Boston. Others claimed she went to Europe. She was never seen in Baton Rouge again. Sister Catherine spent the next 4 years in the Louisiana Hospital for the Insane. According to the doctor's notes, she was a model patient. She prayed constantly, spoke little, and caused no trouble. She never again mentioned visions or prophecies. On November 3, 1873, Sister Catherine was found dead in her cell. The doctors ruled it natural causes, heart failure. She was 36 years old. When they cleared out her room, they found something tucked beneath her mattress, a piece of paper, yellow with age, covered in cramped handwriting. The night attendant who discovered it couldn't read very well, but he recognized dates, hundreds of dates, stretching from 1869 all the way to 1924. He showed it to the head doctor, who examined it with growing confusion. Next to each date was a brief description. March 17, 1869. Strangled Evangeline with rosary in garden. July 2nd, 1869. Pushed Evangeline into river. October 15th, 1869. Poisoned Evangeline's tea. The entries went on, each one describing a different method, a different location, a different way Sister Catherine had killed or tried to kill Evangeline Rousseau. Except all the dates were in the future, from her point of view, and all the entries were written in past tense. The final entry was dated November 3rd, 1873. It read, "Today I will die in my cell. This is the only way to end the cycle. This is the only way to save her. God forgive me for all the times I have killed her, and all the lives I have lived." The head doctor burned the paper immediately. He told no one what it said. In his personal journal, he wrote only this: "Some doors should never be opened. Some truths should never be known." Sheriff Beaumont visited the asylum when he heard about Sister Catherine's death. The doctor told him it was peaceful, that she'd simply gone to sleep and never woken up. Beaumont asked if she'd left any final words, any message. The doctor lied and said no. But later that night, after Beaumont had gone, the doctor sat alone in his office and wondered. If Sister Catherine had truly lived through hundreds of different versions of that night, experiencing every possible outcome, what had the other versions been like? In how many had Evangeline died? In how many had Sister Catherine succeeded? And if Sister Catherine had finally found a version where Evangeline survived, where she stopped herself, had that broken the cycle? Or had her death simply reset everything, sending her consciousness spiraling back to the beginning to live through it all again? The doctor never found answers to these questions. Neither did anyone else. The case of the prophet nun faded from memory, becoming just another strange footnote in Louisiana's history. But every year on March 17th, people in Baton Rouge reported strange occurrences near the old convent. The sound of someone screaming in the garden, The smell of magnolia blossoms out of season. The shadow of a nun standing beneath a tree that had been cut down decades ago. And sometimes, very rarely, someone would find a rosary lying in the grass, its wooden beads stained dark with something that looked like blood but dried too quickly to test. The rosaries were always broken, as if snapped in half by powerful hands. The convent closed in 1891. The building stood empty for years before being torn down in 1920. A school was built on the site, then a parking lot. Now it's a small park with a historical marker that mentions the Sisters of Mercy, but says nothing about Sister Catherine or Evangeline Rousseau. Most people who visit never learn the full story. They see the magnolia tree that still grows there, its branches spreading wide and ancient, and they take pictures. They sit on benches and eat lunch. They never know they're sitting in the exact spot where a woman once strangled her own sister with a rosary, where a nun confessed to a murder before it happened, where time bent into a circle and trapped a soul in an endless loop of violence and guilt. Evangeline Rousseau died in 1924 at the age of 74. She was living in Paris, alone, with no children and no family. In her will, she left a sealed letter to be delivered to the Catholic Church in Baton Rouge. The letter's contents were never made public. The priest who read it said only that it contained a confession and a request for prayers for two souls, Evangeline's and her sister Catherine's. The letter ended with 7 words, the same 7 words Sister Catherine had predicted would be found in Evangeline's hand the night of the murder. The murder that didn't happen. The murder that happened 1,000 times in dreams and visions and other versions of reality. But what those 7 words were, no one alive today can say. The priest took that secret to his grave. The letter was sealed again and locked in the church archives, where it remains to this day, gathering dust in a forgotten box. Some mysteries are meant to stay buried. Some questions are better left unanswered. Because the truth, when you finally find it, might not set you free. It might trap you in a circle you can never escape. It might show you that every choice you make has already been made before, in another time, another place, another version of yourself that you can't remember but can't forget. Sister Catherine knew this. She lived it. She died trying to break free of it. And if her predictions were real, if she truly saw the future and the past and all the infinite moments in between, then somewhere, in some other version of March 17th, 1869, she's still standing in that garden. She's still wrapping that rosary around Evangeline's throat. She's still watching the life drain from her sister's eyes. And she's still whispering the same prayer she whispered the first time and every time after. God, forgive me for what I am about to do. God, forgive me for what I have already done. God, forgive me for what I will do again and again until the end of time. Because in that moment, Catherine Devereux understood something that broke her mind and her soul. She understood that free will is an illusion, that every action is predetermined, that she was both victim and murderer, both innocent and guilty, both saved and damned. She understood that confession means nothing when you confess to a crime you haven't committed yet, but have already committed 1,000 times before. The magnolia tree still stands in that park in Baton Rouge, and on quiet nights, when the wind blows just right, people say you can hear it. A woman's voice, soft and desperate, confessing to a murder that happened and didn't happen, that will happen and has always happened, echoing across time in an endless loop of guilt and prophecy. The voice says, "I killed her. I will kill her. I am killing her now." And somewhere, in the space between those words, Sister Catherine Devereux is still trapped, still living through that night, still trying to break a cycle that has no beginning and no end. The rosary beads click together in the darkness, and the confession continues.